I gotta say, given what happens to the characters here, it really is quite a turn of events. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Later this month, we're getting the VOD release of the reboot of Wrong Turn, which is also the 7th entry in the series. I know it got like a 1 or 2 day release last month, but it wasn't playing near me, but it's probably for the better, as this franchise as a whole is one that I never really got to explore. So I figured, leading up to it, I'll watch all 6 films for the first time, review them all, and then rank all 7 movies once the new one is out. Originally, I was not planning on doing this, but given a lot of the big releases got pushed back again, it cleared up my schedule. So, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts on the Wrong Turn movies were, if you've seen any of them, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my channel out there and growing the community. And if you are new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of newer films, older films, hidden gems, and so much more on a near daily basis. But let's not waste any more time, and let's kick this series off with 2003's Wrong Turn. This stars Desmond Harrington as Chris, who, along with a group of 5 friends, are left stranded deep in the middle of the woods after their cars collide. As they venture deeper into the woods, they face an uncertain and blood-curdling fate. This is directed by Rob Schmidt, and it's written by Alan B. McElroy, who also wrote the reboot, and who also notably wrote films like Spawn and Halloween 4. And to be honest, I didn't really know much about the Wrong Turn franchise until I happened to hear about this reboot a couple of months ago, and I was amazed to find out that not only was it somewhat of a hit, but it managed to give us 5 more sequels all through the 2000s and early 2010s. Totally missed them all. So if this franchise did slip under a lot of people's radars, in a way I think it makes sense. It was released at the peak of what I guess you'd call the slasher revival, because after Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer blew up, all through the late 90s and early 2000s, we got a ton of teen-oriented slasher films getting cranked out one right after another, and they seemed never-ending. Films like The Final Destination and Jeepers Creepers movies were some of the big standouts at this time, but there were so many, it was hard to keep up. It also has a who's who of actors who were pretty much that one person who you knew from that one thing around that time, which was kind of the standard of horror movie casts in the 2000s, because you had Eliza Dushku from Buffy, Desmond Harrington, who went on to Dexter after this, Emmanuel Shrieky from Entourage is here, Jeremy Sisto from 6 Feet Under is also here, Lindy Booth from The Famous Jet Jackson is on this one, as well as Kevin Zegers. Josh from the Air Bud movies. Like, these are all people whose names I haven't heard in years, and I didn't look this cast up before watching this movie, so needless to say, it was a pleasant surprise to see them all pop up together. Now, as for the story itself, it's more or less a mix between the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Deliverance. It takes place out in the woods where the occasional car might pass by, but it's usually pretty isolated, so that's where the setting gives off some of the Deliverance vibes, and I think they even make a reference to it in here. But then the villains are these cannibals who have this abandoned little cabin in the woods, and they're mutated and they don't say much, and we don't always get clear glimpses of them, but when we do, I got a lot of Leatherface vibes from them. They also even reminded me a bit of the cannibals from The Hills Have Eyes, so that's another film this may remind you of. And in fact, that's pretty much the whole vibe of this film. It's pretty reminiscent of other movies that were released around the same time, or from the golden age of slasher movies. It's very much a product of its time, complete with its soundtrack that's mostly made up of alternative rock and heavy metal bands from that era, and it doesn't do anything too egregious. Like, there wasn't anything here that I found to be outright horrendous, but it also doesn't really do much to make itself stand out from other slasher films, which will be the biggest turnoff if you haven't seen this by now. It was filmed on a fairly low budget, which will be pretty noticeable at various points. Even with the credits, there's this grainy look to them, with a font that looks like they may have been typed up on someone's personal computer, and it also has that same desaturated color palette that we especially got with a lot of slasher films around this time. Like, a lot of scenes will be dark, but it doesn't always have to do with the fact these characters are in a dark setting, but it's more of an issue that the scenes just weren't properly lit. Plus, a lot of its characters are very disposable. We don't learn anything about these villains whatsoever, and meanwhile, we get the bare minimum at best with the protagonists. We learn a couple of minor things, like Desmond Harrington's a medical student, and 2 of the characters from the group of friends are engaged, but the relevance of these details to the plot is pretty much non-existent. It felt like whenever there was a line thrown in there about backstory, it felt more like it was shoehorned in there just to give these characters something. And yeah, I know you don't go to these movies for complex characters. None of us do. It's just, it would have been nice to have gotten something, just a little more, because when characters get killed off here, I felt almost nothing. Especially because there are a few of them who get introduced and are gone within like 2 scenes. So, yeah. Even with films like Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, and so on, you got something with some of these characters. All that being said though, I actually didn't mind this movie for what it is. I found myself interested in how everything would play out, and the competent acting all around made up just a tiny bit for the underdeveloped characters, and as far as delivering on the actual thrills, it didn't do a bad job. I thought some of the chase scenes through the woods were pretty fun. The outdoor setting does give way to some creative setups, including a few exciting moments where there were chases on rooftops or in the trees, as well as when the protagonists had to work in groups to try distracting the villains. And for those of you who are into bloodier horror films, there are actually a number of moments that I think you'll enjoy. It's by no means the goriest horror film out there, but it doesn't play things safe by any means. There are some action scenes that are decently done, including a number of sequences involving the use of arrows, and while a lot of these are done with cheesy special effects, for what they are, they're still pretty entertaining. There really isn't much to say about this movie. It's the sort of film that knows what it is, and it just wants you to have some fun with it. While it's mostly made up of familiar elements, at least it tries having fun with those familiar elements. So it's the sort of movie that allows you to sit back, turn your brain off, and just enjoy it for a casual watch. This is basically like every other slasher film that was released around this time, and that's for better or worse. It doesn't do anything terrible, but it's also a pretty familiar experience. Its protagonists are all forgettable, while its villains feel like knockoffs from more established and recognizable franchises, and in terms of dramatic beats, it does what most other slasher films do. But what's comforting is, at least it tries having some fun when doing so, with its entertaining action scenes, its likable cast, and some creative setups here and there. It's the textbook definition of a B-movie, and that's totally okay. If you're not into those sort of movies, this may not be up your alley, but if they are, you may have a good time with this one. Wrong Turn gets a 6.5 out of 10. So stay tuned, I'll have my review of the first sequel, Wrong Turn 2 Dead End, coming soon. And in the meantime, let me know, did you see Wrong Turn, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Are you a big fan of slasher movies? Do you have a favorite in this franchise? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching everyone, and keep having fun with film.